All right, welcome back to Bayou Time. We have with the State Representative Jerome Zarang, District 52. Good to see you. How are you,
Good
Jerome?
to see you, Moore. I'm fine.
All right. You know, the special session really caught my eye. I had Jim Donlan on for nearly an hour, and there's so many people that are still affected by insurance, hence the special session. But you can go throughout this community, your district for sure, and just talk to people who've had nightmares with insurance companies. And it didn't get any better, it got worse as we went along. So the special session that y'all just got through with, what do you think some of the good points are, and what do you think some of the points that still need a lot of work?
Well, there's no doubt, Martin, the insurance issue, as you discussed, is going to be a problem for a while for many folks. And the special session was primarily just to address one of the most critical issues, and that is finding affordable insurance for people, because it's a problem for a lot of folks to get insurance, even if they can afford the insurance. In some cases, you can't even get it, other than Citizens, and Citizens is pretty expensive. So this was an attempt to provide funding to entice insurers to come in and write insurance, affordable insurance. And we were successful in that in terms of providing that money. But we referred to it as a Band-Aid. The commissioner, you said you had him on here, he referred to it as a tourniquet, because it's really going to just bridge the gap until we can do something long-term to address the insurance issues that we're faced with. We're living in the coastal, in Louisiana, the unfortunate reality is the highest probability of a named storm, once it enters the Gulf, it hits the coast of Louisiana. So again, it's not a question of if, it's just a question of when. So we know we're going to have to deal with this, and insurers are concerned, obviously, and so we need to look at things that we can do to reduce the risk or give them comfort that they can come in and write insurance that's affordable.
Better word, incentives for them to come by.
Incentives, that's the financial aspect, but we're looking at, after this special session, this upcoming session, looking at things that long-term, like fortified homes, and we can talk a little bit about that, but also looking at things that may be improving the Citizens plan to make it more workable or affordable, and looking at opportunities in terms of adjusters and other things that have plagued this region when people have been hit by storms. I mean, you pay your premiums, you figure when you need it, you should be able to get it. Well, it's been a problem for people, and that's what we need to address.
You know, and they got so many people talking about, and I've thought about it, to be honest. I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to self-insure. And I'm going through all the scenarios. Okay, I got this many buildings. If I do this, people have been forced to think out of the box because of things that are taking place. And you mentioned the fortifying of homes. Well, I think every storm that comes through, when Andrew came through, everybody said, all right, we're going to make restrictions on building, we're going to fortify the building. That lasted a while. Ida comes through, so much more destruction, because it was, still say it's a Cat 5. I don't know why they haven't named it one, but every storm of that magnitude shows us our weaknesses, and you rebuild. It does sort of purge some of the older buildings that maybe had 1 or 2 nails in them, and they make you put 20 nails now. I'm just using that as an example. But so there is some good that happens with building codes and all, but you sort of have to work through all the bad to get to the good, don't you?
Well, yeah, and one of the things that we're looking at, and kind of emulating what Alabama did, and somewhat in Florida, they've provided incentives for homeowners if they're going to new construction, or you can even go back in older construction and fortify your homes, provide some funding. For example, you can fortify a home that'll provide anywhere from a 15 to 20% reduction in premium, according to most insurers, for about $2,500 on new construction. It's a little more expensive in existing construction, anywhere from about $6,500 to $2,500. But you're talking about, as much as insurance is right now, homeowners insurance, getting a 15 to 20% reduction in your premium is pretty substantial, or at least it helps. So there are things that we can do, and looking at maybe how we can provide some funding for homeowners to help them to get that.
How many? I think when I had him on the show, he had 4 commitments from people that wanted to come in and write. What was the final number on that? Do you remember?
Well, he said there were 10 that they were talking to. He had some assurances from 4, but that 8 were said, eight companies said that they were going to come in and write. So we'll see. They're in the process of finalizing the rules. They'll have 3 solicitations that the commissioner will offer opportunities for folks to come in and write it. And the intent is that to get the money, for example, if they want to get $5 million, that company is going to have to put up an additional $5 million. So that's a value of $10 million, and they have to write twice of what they get. So theoretically, they get 5, they put up 5, that's 10, they have to write $20 million of business. Now, they don't get all their $5 million right up front. The commitment is they have to do it over 5 years. So they'll get 20% the first year if they comply and do all the rules, 20% the next, and over 5 years, they will get their money. So it's kind of a safeguard.
Right. Educate the public a little bit, because tell them, why exactly did we need the special session, and talk about allocation of monies and all, because I think the public needs to hear that.
Well, the commissioner and the governor decided that to have this, if not having the special session, that it was going to continue to be a problem, especially in writing reinsurance. And that's the critical aspect about insurance, or making it affordable, is when insurance companies are going to write business, they have to have the proper reinsurance to ensure their backup in case something happens.
Right.
Well, getting the insurance that's going to be written relatively soon, or now within this time period, the reinsurers are pretty much booking their work, or what's available for right now before June 1st. So you have to do it before June 1st. So to do that, the time the commissioner felt was now that it had to be done. And so you can't appropriate dollars outside of session. So you have to have a special session. So if we'd have had to wait until April, and then if you wait till April, by the time the bill goes through the process, it would probably take another. You can speed it up, kind of like what we did in special session, but even that would still have taken a couple weeks. So it would have been the middle to the end of April. Now we went through session, it's now available, and insurance companies who have indicated that they would take advantage of this can now go out and get reinsurance to be able to come write business.
And it came at a time when I heard it in the insurance commissioner's voice when I was interviewing him. He's normally pretty confident when he's on, but I could just sense that if we don't do something, we're going to lose a lot of people in a lot of communities who just can't afford it. It's going to affect economies, because let's think about it. People normally lived in a 3,000 square foot house, and they can't afford the insurance. They may live in a 1,500 square foot house. That's going to affect Morrison, Lowe's, everybody around. So it was sort of paramount that you have this. But talk about the 15 million that, and I may use the wrong word, and you can correct me, but that was sort of earmarked for this particular thing, but he couldn't just spend it. It had to be approved, right? Right.
There's a special assessment that the commissioner puts on insurance companies that can be used. It's an assessment for doing business in Louisiana. And if he needs it or has to use it for conducting insurance business for his department, he utilizes that.
Rainy day fund?
Well, it's kind of like a rainy day fund, but also assessing or looking at things that he needs to work his department, the insurance department. If he doesn't utilize that money, then it goes into state general fund. Well, there was about $15 million this year. So those $15 million, instead of going to the state general fund, will then go to the 45. So essentially, we just did the additional money to get to the 45 out of the state general fund, or excess dollars that we had.
And there's some people, and I heard it quite a bit. I listened to WWL, and I heard them talking about it one day. And a lot of people calling in were going, well, why not just take that $40 million and spread it amongst people that need a check, and give them a check and let them take care of their own thing? Easier said than done, right?
Well, it's easier said than done, but does it get us to where we need to be? The challenge or the problem we have right now is we don't have insurers writing business because of the risk here. And, you know, the state farms, the farm bureaus, the big companies, they've essentially pulled out. So we're looking at trying to get companies, and some of the things that we put in there. Now, you just don't want any fly-by-night company. That was part of the problem from the last time, is that people, some of them took advantage of this, and they're no longer in business right now. So we put in some safeguards, some of which will, again, it has to be for 5 years. Give preference for those who will take people off as citizens. That's the other thing, too, is that's the most expensive. They come off the rolls. Also, that if you were if you filed for bankruptcy, or if you one of those companies that took the money, or even if you didn't take the money and you took off, you didn't pay your claims, and you just left and filed for bankruptcy, you can't participate in the program either. So you have to have reserves equal. You can only borrow, let's say, to participate in a program, you can't request more than 20% of your reserves. So you have to have 80% in reserves above what you're even asking for to participate. So you
So you'd have to have 80% more of the 5 million?
Oh, yes, 80% more in reserves before you can even participate. Now, you can get 5 or less, it just depends, but I think on the first one, it's about limiting it up to 25, because we want to try to get the first solicitation, trying to get as many companies who are interested in as possible.
Didn't we go through this with Governor Blanco way back?
After
Something
Katrina?
similar?
Yeah, it was Katrina. It's essentially the same thing, but we've put in some safeguards, some things that we've learned from that program, and there's no doubt that it did help, and insurers did come in after and participate. There were a lot more who came in and didn't participate, but it's kind of like a lot of the insurance folks have said they operate in a herd mentality. When a few of them come in and they start writing, and the others see, hey, there's business, and then they all come in. So, and that was a lot of it after the Katrina, but it did help in terms of incentivizing, getting some companies to come in and write business.
What about a minute left to this segment? Did he give names? He didn't give me any names of people. I'm sure y'all got some.
He did give names of 9 of the companies, and I apologize, I can pull it up.
Next segment, maybe we can get it up.
I can try to find them.
Because I was curious as to who they would be. Don't they have to have an A rating?
They have to have an A+ rating,
Okay.
and they also have, looking at, in addition to the ratings, again, the aspect about not filing bankruptcy, or their history and their resources are going to, reserves are important.
We're hoping Mr. Jim Donlin would send us a list of those insurers that are on board, and I think you have the list.
He did, and I appreciate the commissioner sending these. And it's important for the names, not only for the people, but primarily for the insurance agents themselves, so that when they're looking to provide insurance for their clients, they can call these companies. And the 6 companies that have expressed, and the commissioner indicated that there are 10 to 12, but a few of them have requested that their names not be released, but there are 6, and the 6 are Safepoint Insurance Company, Allied Trust Insurance Company, Cajun Underwriters, Reciprocal Exchange, Centauri Group, Elevate Reciprocal Exchange, and Surechoice Underwriters Reciprocal Exchange, and those are the 6 that...
Now, I've heard some names that I've never heard before, so I wonder if it's possible for people to form a conglomerate and sort of maybe get together and try to get a little more buying power, like Walmart's or Rouse's, that kind of thing, in the insurance field, because I haven't heard of a couple of those, but that don't mean they weren't in existence before.
Right, they weren't in existence before, but there are at least several hundred who are licensed insurance carriers for Louisiana. Some, not all, obviously, there's few that want to or will take advantage of this.
Well, they
and these
must
are the ones
have been
that
together
expressed.
because they had to have an A+ rating to get into the game.
Yes.
So they must have been in existence before, when I come to think of it. But with that said, so to me, it's sort of hopeful that we at least are going to have a choice, that when we're dealing with our insurance agent, we have some options at this point.
Yes, options, and options that are affordable, because the alternative, or the insurer of last resort, Citizens, has to charge 10% above the highest within that market.
Correct.
So you right off the bat, you know you're going to get the most expensive insurance if you go to Citizens. At least this way, it'll provide some competition and hopefully provide some opportunities for people to get some insurance at a more reasonable rate.
Yeah, because, you know, we talked about it also with the commission when he was on. When you have people that are already paying the mortgage, the banks don't let you, they don't finance your house unless you have insurance. So, but if you can't afford the insurance and the mortgage.
Or they'll get the insurance and take it out on your behalf and include that
Right.
within the mortgage.
Correct.
The other irony is, and Representative Kerner, you know, used to be Mayor Kerner in Lafitte. I was telling a story at the special session. He came up to the mic and said that there were several homeowners who lost their homes in Lower Lafitte from Ida, and Habitat for Humanities came in and built them a new home.
Mm-hmm.
The unfortunate reality is they still couldn't afford, even with a free home that they were given, they still could not afford the insurance to insure it because it was so expensive for them to get insurance, even for the homes that they were provided for Habitat for Humanity. And that's how bad or drastic the situation has become, especially in certain areas of the state.
You know, the state was in such a good direction. But we're getting there, you know. Y'all were doing some wonderful things for this area. And then Ida. Just happens. So I guess with natural disasters, you could be just purring along. And not to say y'all still aren't doing some good things. We've got some good things happening. But this is that thing that needs the big Band-Aid right now.
Well, that Ida was no doubt.
We'll get rid of the Band-Aid, get a permanent fix.
And looking at, because, you know, the economy is, even we're coming out of that COVID slump and getting past the incentives of the false economy that was provided when the federal government infused a lot of these federal dollars, that we're now actually, the economy is starting to get back on track. You mentioned Ida, but this is on top of 2 years ago, Laura, and that's the problem.
Right.
In this region, in the state, we were hit by pretty significant storms of the past 2 years.
Laura, Zeta.
Yes, and then Ida. And prior to that, we were pretty fortunate. We went several years without actually having a storm or a major storm of impact that these recent storms have had. But it's just, again, part of the reality of living in coastal Louisiana. It's just a matter of when.
I was in Tampa last week, and somebody made the comment to me, we haven't had a major storm, and I forgot how many years they said. It was a lot of years. I went, don't even say that. You're going to get one right up the pipe now. You know?
Put the gris-gris on them.
Yeah, for sure. But anything, let's close. We've got about a minute 30 left. Anything else you'd like the public to know?
Well, I think the important thing is, again, this is just an opportunity to provide some relief for homeowners so that they can get some insurance, hopefully, at a reasonable rate. And we're going into this regular session looking at addressing long-term needs, you know, building codes and looking at fortified homes, looking at making citizens not so much necessarily the insurer of last resort, but maybe making it more cost-effective to be able to provide opportunities for people when we do have situations like this. Looking at some of the problems we had with adjusters, the problem with people, adjusters would change. Some homeowners said that they've gone through 5 to 10 different adjusters.
I had 5.
Yeah,
I had 5.
Have changed, and then it's you starting from scratch all over again, which is both frustrating and delays ultimately to get your payment. So those are the kind of things that we need to address and will hopefully address. The problem is we're coming up to a fiscal session, so we're limited into 5 bills outside of tax-related or fiscal bills. So we're just hoping and collectively working together to try to address these important issues.
Well, we always joke, you control all that money, huh?
Well, the committee and ultimately the body does, and
I understand.
I just kind of shepherd it through.
I'm just picking at you
No,
a
I
little bit.
understand.
It's a very important position now, no doubt. Congratulations. Thank you for coming in, and thanks for explaining that to us, and good luck as we move forward.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Martin.
All right, Ziza Rang. We'll take a short break. We'll have a lot more here on Bayou Time, a lot of news in the area. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.